Welcome back to Echo. Last we saw, the gang was searching for Carl, because apparently he's missing now, for reals, and not just trapped in some ghost dimension. Chase and Jenna are about to leave and are about to go looking for Carl in what I assume is Jasmine Street, maybe? Or out in the I don't know. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to Echo. Last we saw, the group was looking for Carl, because apparently he's missing now, for reals, and not just trapped in some ghost dimension in his house. Now then, if I recall, Jenna and Chase are about to leave the motel and they're about to go look for Duke to see if he's seen anything. Because, the first person you're gonna ask is Duke. The really crazy guy. The air is surprisingly fresh outside, even a bit damp. It's as if the motel room itself had its own oppressive atmosphere that was permeating my sinuses, and now I'm finally free. Near the horizon, thick gray clouds loom overhead. The reservation must be getting some rain. Jenna seems to notice as well, taking a few steps forward into the mostly empty parking lot before speaking up. Kind of nice out, isn't it? Yeah. She opens her mouth to speak, but pauses some as she looks over her shoulder, a light frown crossing her blonde features. Come on, let's go. She starts moving again, heading towards the street. Duke's house, right? And we're walking? Yeah, is that a problem? She glances back. I reach down, feeling my tender hardening muscles around my thighs and knees. Just a bit sore from the hike, that's all. Oh, you're a tough guy, Chase. I'm sure you'll manage. A tough guy? I hustle some to catch up, the Fennec already on the road. She smiles some as I catch up alongside her. Your phone has a flashlight, right? Yeah. Oh, give me a sec. I reach into my pocket and flick on my phone. It takes a second, but I find the right button. The cracked pavement in front of us quickly illuminated. Just in case we come across any snakes or spiders. Or overweight rams. Those two. I shine my phone towards a sagebrush that winds along the narrow wash that passes by the motel. It's like I'm half expecting to see Carl's goofy grinning muzzle peeking out through the brambles. I'm sorry if I woke you. It's fine. I was in the shower. You woke everyone else, though. Jenna straightens her tank top, peering through the cracked glass windows of old ice cream shop. Even the for lease sign on the awning is mostly faded away. It's still got that old Victorian-style architecture that you see in a lot of buildings, but built originally by the wealthier settlers at the turn of the century. Faded green and pale blue paint still clings to the parts of the main facade, with a copper metal roof, a mix of dark amber and turquoise. In its heyday, it probably stood out as something fierce, a colorful contrast to the harsh beiges of the desert, and ultimately an opulent reminder of the old world amidst the new. I wasn't expecting Leo to be here, honestly. He giving you any more trouble? I watched the pavement turn to packed dirt beneath my feet as we round the corner onto Gretchen Road. It's a desolate stretch of road, the only striking feature being a concrete mixing business that closed its doors back in the 90s. You can still see the big mounds of grayish dirt past the slated chain link. Ultimately, it takes me a moment to respond to Jenna's question. No, he's, just upset. I can practically feel the fox's incredulous raised eyebrow, a trademark reaction if she ever had one. Actually, well, this is gonna sound stupid. Playing Leo's behavior off as him being just upset is stupid, but continue. I sigh. Sorry. Jenna frowns some and moves closer, nudging my arm with her shoulder. Hey, you haven't done anything wrong. I'm pretty sure he has. I don't know about that. Oh? Again, that expectant look. Ugh, here goes. I'm kinda glad you texted me. Didn't really want to go back to sleep. I guess I was having a nightmare. The same sort of recurring one that I've been having that's a little different each time. Each dream, I'm facing myself, but it's not me. Not like a mirror me. Things are different, messed up, blurred. Sometimes it speaks and it's all distorted, like an old AM radio station with bad signal. Jenna looks away for a moment, then back at me. And each time it gets a little clearer, and it might just be because it's fresh in my head right now, but I kind of remember what I was saying. I stop briefly, shining the flashlight at a tumbleweed rolling across the desert road ahead. It briefly gets stuck on a mesquite tree, bouncing against the trunk and leaving a few twigs behind before rolling back alongside its course. Do you remember when I texted you that I got into Pueblo and you drove all the way back down here to celebrate? I do. We were going to surprise Leo, remember? I do. There's a delay in her words, as she's seeming to already know exactly what the incident I'm referring to is. The prank. She lets out a long, drawn-out breath of air. We pretended that you were cheating on him with those fake texts I was sending you. He smashed your phone and you told him you were leaving Echo. Yes, it wasn't the best of practical jokes to play on someone who was already fairly unstable. He wasn't. Chase, what does this have to do with your dream? She cuts me off, her tone more curious than stern. I know, it's just... The whole thing was just playing back like some kind of record, everything that happened. All the fake text messages you sent me as Jared, me leaving the phone on the table, Leo confronting me, and then you showing up and telling him it's a joke, and that he's overreacting, and then smash. I make a motion like I'm going to toss my phone down. Jenna flinches, instinctively grabbing for it, before slowly furrowing her brow at me. Has Leo been guilting you about that? No, not really. So, you've been feeling guilty then? I guess. Why else would this be, manifesting in my subconscious and all that? Well, I'd usually recommend expressing this to Leo. If I didn't think that your attempts at reconciliation would be perceived by him as you trying to get back together. She rubs the bridge of her short nose before crossing her arms over her chest. We did already apologize for this years ago, but if you absolutely must, maybe wait until we're back at the Pueblo. He's clearly got some issues to sort out right now, and you're under absolutely no obligation to try and solve them, especially considering his recent behavior. It's incredibly difficult to help people that don't want to be helped. I mean, it's true. But I disagree that you shouldn't at least try. You're probably right. She gives me a sidelong look. I mean, you are right. I rub my paws across my face, smushing my own facial features into my paw pads. It's just shitty, I guess. You know someone for 15 years of your life and grow up with them. There's a vested interest. I was there for every big mistake, triumph, you name it. I'm not sure what exactly further support I can even offer at this point. It's just been too long. Plus, I'm gone again as soon as this weekend's up, so what's the point when I'm probably just gonna fuck things up worse? Chase. Jenna's tone is curt, and I look over to her face very much matches her tone. Leo was dry humping you at a kiddie arcade. You do not need to feel this conflicted about being upset about that. Look. There's a moment of hesitation, like she knows the right words to say, but needs time to phrase them more delicately. I understand that men have a different hormonal attraction to each other than generally what I feel, as a woman, when I am attracted to someone. For men, that feeling of attraction, and I am paraphrasing something you probably already understand on at least an intuitive level, is broadly more physical and sudden, and you're generalizing men, Jenna. There's an emphasis on aesthetic and, the mechanics of what's happening. I blink, getting the gist of what she's saying, but not exactly sure where she's going with this. I'm pretty sure I know where she's going with this. As stereotypical as it is, most women feel attraction as a sort of slow burn. So do men. Where passion is derived from intimacy, meaning, contrast, forbidden love, etc. She gesticulates in a swirling motion. That's not to say abrupt sparks of fancy don't form for women, too, urges being what they are. So I may not be adequately equipped to fully grasp the true nature of your guys' relationship, but maybe you should just stop there then. What Leo did at the family plex is just beyond dumb. Latent horniness. Which, I mean, it's true. But, it's complete detachment from reality of you two's respective situations. Jenna's voice raises some, louder than her usual controlled level and probably inappropriate for this time of night. It's upsetting, especially so with all that's going on. I continue to walk slightly ahead of Jenna, unsure of what to say, and feeling like I've met her gaze right now, I'd regret it. I shine my light on a lone desert willow that sits on the bank of a nearby wash. In the branches, flickers of reflected light shine back. Eyes. They're small and sitting squarely in a nest made of brambles, like that of a tumbleweed from earlier. Bird. I announce, monotone. Jenna steps up beside me, hands on her hips as she looks to where I'm pointing now. She exhales some with exasperation before responding. Yeah. Looks like a wern. How can you tell? As far as I know, Jenna was never much into nature or animals. Werns are those really fat ones, rotund. She pushes her small hands together, making a circle to emphasize the roundness. Her eyes must be better than mine, because I can only just barely make out the beak. I look back at Jenna, and she's still staring up at the tree. Something about the whole scene, it gives me this strange twinge of nostalgia. Us, wandering aimlessly about Echo with nowhere to go and nothing to do. And how we thought the feelings would last forever. Is it just me, or is this conversation kind of familiar? Not the bird, I mean. You and I walking around, talking about stupid things Leo is doing? Yeah, that's not exactly out of the ordinary. She smiles some, and I can't help but smile back. Yeah, that and... God, do you remember showing me those yaoi comics you got from the mall? Oh yes, I hid those under a rock like half a mile from my house. I had to fight a scorpion to get you your Koko Tanuki Ai issues. Jenna lets out an amused noise, shaking her head. While my relationship with the rest of the group, besides Leo, had mainly stayed the same after they found out I liked guys, Jenna and I actually grew more close after the fact. Despite not really being into anime, talking to her about manga and the dumb romance stuff in them was always kind of fun. My hero. I sort of remember discussing the differences between yaoi and bara. You talking just now kind of reminded me of that. Saying those two words out loud feels weird. It really does. Boys' love and man's love, right? I do remember that, Chase. I'm a little surprised you do too. She says this with a forced, teasing tone to her voice for some reason. I cant my head curiously towards her. Why wouldn't I? I really enjoyed all that. Talking with you about it, I mean. Truly? I suppose I thought I was only being humored for my special interest topics that the rest of you were not even remotely interested in. It's a little creepy, now that I think about it in context. I wave dismissively. No, I mean, you weren't like a fan Yoshi or whatever. Hell, you should have seen all that sort of yaoi junk Leo kept on his computer. Funjoshi. And really? Sure, whatever, and yeah, he was pretty into the more porny stuff. Jenna laughs them. Most yaoi is written by women who've never met a gay guy before and is full of gender-imprinted uke-seme tropes and dubious consent. Hey, sometimes that's hot. I'm surprised with the words that leave my mouth, and I immediately feel a burn around the edges of my ears. Jenna looks at me. I can't quite read her expression now in the darkness, though I'm not about to shine a flashlight on her. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I read it. As long as it's understood as fantasy and not normalcy. Of course. I nod. But, to take this back to reality for a second. No one should be forcing themselves on you like that, no matter what they see in porn or how long they've known you. Right, I appreciate the concern. I nod again to Jenna, who returns to scanning the nearby underbrush. However, I can't help but feel at least a little like I'm being treated like some battered victim here. Maybe I'm just too numb these days to feel like I probably should. The road turns back into chipped asphalt as we get closer to the old rail yard, the tracks to which run directly behind Leo and Duke's backyards, not that they'd seen any use in decades. Most of the houses down the road are newer, and the county even installed a streetlight after an old Badger lady got hit by a car 5 years ago. That being said, most of the residences stand vacant now, in various states of disrepair. As we round a bend, I spot Leo's house down the way. It's a little ranch-style house with a big backyard, right off a dirt road leading from a street. It used to be his family's home before they moved out. No cop cars parked out in front or anything, not that I really expected there to be. Jenna slows down for a moment, peering over her shoulder. Her senses are better than mine, so I lessen my pace as well, trying to listen carefully. It's dead silent beyond the usual desert ambience, the rustle of breeze-swept trees, chirping crickets, and twit from local night birds. I turn back to look at her. What? She frowns to herself. Nothing. Wait, did you hear something? She shakes her head, rubbing her wrists as she refocuses her attention back on me. No, just some unexpected nostalgia. I smile some, glad I'm not the only one. Oh, what for? I can't exactly place it. It's just a feeling, almost sort of like what people call deja vu. Ah. I nod sagely, pretending to understand. She watches me for a moment, as if studying my features for something deeper. I watch her as well, the golden glow of the street light giving her fur a pale radiance, blurring her features into something warm and familiar. Her bushy tail sways and I can see the light plumes of desert dust scatter away on the asphalt beneath. They dissipate into the air like smoke from a cigarette. When we were younger, we had many nights like this, walking to and from Leo's place. Most of the time, we'd be chatting about video games we've been playing or some manga that Jenna had gotten into. Looking back, I could tell she savored those times. The fleeting moments she had away from home, where she could express her passion without fear of judgment or ridicule. Well, occasionally there'd be ridicule, but of the good faith sort, I think. Whenever she criticized some dumb thing I said or weird-ass phase I was going through, it never felt like she thought lesser of me. She suffered through my late 2000s frosted tip highlight scene phase, after all. She was just trying to encourage me to be a better person. Those long walks and talks we had were like ways to gauge our own small-town-induced insanity. It was during those times that I felt more secure in myself than I ever did elsewhere. But it's also when we understood we truly didn't really belong here. I can't help but wonder if that's what she's thinking of now. She smiles once, then picks up the pace again. I step up and match her speed. I hope Duke still works late shifts. I recall him being quite nocturnal when we were growing up. He works at the Blue Diamond Casino by the reservation, right? As far as I remember. I used to think that only native people could get jobs there. I know they try to keep it that way, but many of the locals in the res lack the skill set and training for some of the jobs. Hence, the outsourcing. I think Duke works, or at least worked, as a security technician. I guess I didn't know him that well. Me neither, but he was friends with my father. I can see Duke's house now, a large manufactured home that's raised up like 3 feet off the ground. I think Flynn told me once that they made him raise it up since it sat on the flood zone for a nearby wash. Said wash pretty much never had water in it, except for one particular monsoon season where a flash flood sent white water currents down it. It all drained out into Lake Emma. It's difficult to see in the dark, but the house looks to be in a bit of a sorry state. The yard is overgrown with tall weeds, and there's a bunch of stripped bicycle parts and other electronic components strewn about. Jenna sees it too and lets out an audible hum, as if acknowledging some confirmed suspicion. I'm about to ask her what's up when she speaks up again. You know, my grandmother never left the reservation, no matter how bad it got down there. I used to visit her a lot before she got sick. Oh? There's something about the tone in her voice that makes me think I should stop walking. I turn and focus on her. I don't believe any of you guys ever met her. She was probably the most down-to-earth member of my family. despite genuinely believing in a lot of the old spiritual aspects of Meseta culture, like ring dances. Jenna gives me a look that makes me immediately regret speaking, my tail curling instinctively. You're thinking of the Pascowata tribe. They're the ones that did the dancing around the bonfire bit that gets attributed to every native culture for some reason. Right, my bad. I give her a little thumbs up of understanding. I must look especially scorned because Jenna begins to snigger a little. She just shakes her head. Hey, you're a college educated journalist now. You can't get away with acute ignorance anymore. I've got some more years left of that, actually, I say with a faux defensive tone. I guess I should hold on to staying cute for as long as I can. Oh, that's easy, Chase. All you have to do is lose the goatee. What? Oh, come on. I reach up and grab my dyed piece of facial scruff, and a bubbling sense of self-consciousness burns at my cheeks. Jenna laughs some more. I'm just kidding. I know Leo isn't a fan of it, though. He told me as much. I let out a bit of a defeated noise for some reason that also kind of stings. Jenna waves dismissively, trying to get back to what she was saying. She seems serious about getting what she has to say off her chest. Anyway, Grandma had all this ham radio equipment in her house. She started collecting it after Grandpa died, which was long before I was born. She was really into technology and broadcasting, which admittedly was an oddball contrast to her more spiritual, tradition based outlook on life. She crosses her arms, taking a glance inside an old parked pickup truck that's missing its plates on the side of the road. I shine my phone's flashlight inside, but there's just a bunch of bags of what looks like farming stuff, mainly fertilizer. I can bet I know what they're using that for. I remember thinking it was neat. She used to sit on her porch with her quilting gear and talk on a radio to passing truckers. Wow, really? I start to picture an old native woman who looks like Jenna, kneading needs in one paw and a radio speaker in the other. Yeah, her radio had pretty good range. She did this for years, got kind of a reputation because of it. Sweetheart of Echo Valley, or something along those lines. Oh, she was like flirting with them? Jenna smirks, slightly shrugging her shoulders. Well, I suppose there was probably some of that. I remember Adam mentioning that sometimes she would find flowers in her postbox, sometimes even letters. Grandma was pretty shy, actually, and didn't like how she looked. When she was born, her ears and part of her scalp were malformed. It was at some underfunded tribal clinic up north, so they weren't equipped to fix it, didn't get the money for it later in life either. She brings her paw up to her own ears, running her fingers down them to the base of her head fur. She always wanted to wear those big sun hats whenever she went somewhere, like she didn't feel right being seen. But over the radio, she would mainly just talk to these truck drivers, ask them about their day, about things that made them happy. And I remember hearing about this one particular time where she talked with a truck driver who had recently lost his wife in an accident. Naturally, he was very upset and was considering whether life was worth living anymore. So, Grandma told him to pull over and come visit her. He was reluctant at first, but he did. Grandma got together all her old neighbor ladies and rolled out a big ancient grill from the 60s. They baked a bunch of fry bread and cooked up a ton of tacos. She even went out and personally got the ingredients to make some homemade cookies, since he mentioned he liked those over the radio. When he got there, she taught him how to make all the food himself. She was worried that without a wife, he wouldn't know how to cook something decent on his own. She also went around and introduced him to everyone, treated him like a guest of honor. He was a little rat guy, really meek. At first, he was worried that he was being awkward and was out of place, but they talked for hours and hours, way into the night. His wife and him had been together for 18 years, and she was an art teacher at an elementary school in Two Canyons. So, before he left, she and him made a sand painting. A sand painting? I'm reluctant to interrupt, but I've never heard of that before. It's a painting in the sand, usually done with pigments. What's interesting is, they're not really art objects. They're for helping people heal to become better. Once painted, the person who needs healing would sit in the center of the painting. The energy and goodwill that was put into the painting was to help the person in need, healing spirits and all that sort of thing. I know, nowadays we mainly see them framed up at roadside craft sales, but that's what they were originally for. So, Jenna trails off and I look away as she clears her throat. She takes a deep, slow breath, and it takes her just a second to continue. My parents weren't there at grandmother's funeral. It was at some public building in Peyton for some reason. From my family, it was just Adam and I. Adam? Really? Yes, this was long before he started changing. We were nearly a third of the way through the service when a rat guy shows up and I had to ask Adam who he was. The only people there at that point were us foxes. After that, I started noticing more non-foxes come in. Some were literally wearing those stereotypical trucker hats with the holy bits in the back. And of course, half of the people there were really confused who these guys were, like maybe they were at the wrong funeral. They just sat in the back, and then Adam went up to speak. She folds her arms tighter across her chest, smiling to herself as her gaze flicks upward. Adam stuttered his way through his speech, but at the end of it, he started inviting up the new arrivals in the back. A lot of them were fairly gruff-looking guys, you know? And one by one, they got up and started reading letters. She pauses again. Letters thanking her for being so kind, for giving them someone to talk to about their problems, or just being so witty and fun to speak to. The rat guy, God, I wish I remembered his name, went up last, and his letter addressed Grandma like she was still there with us. He talked about how he was doing, how tough things were after what happened. He mentioned his wife by name, about how losing someone so good and special can make it feel like the world had become so much darker. But how it's always important to remember that there are still good people out there. Even if there's just someone who can lend an ear for a while. And it felt like he was actually talking to us about Grandma. I thought about that a lot when, Adam passed. About how maybe it wasn't just a chemical imbalance and perhaps he just needed someone to talk to. She keeps her arms still tight over her torso, though it looks more now like a self-bracing measure. A far cry from her usual standoffish posturing. I also thought about how you're so goddamn alone out here. She gestures with both arms at her surroundings. I peer down at myself, then back at Jenna. She lets out a little noise that sounds like a quick sigh before shaking her head. Not you specifically, but rather anyone stuck in this place. What is it with Echo and taking away all that's good? She's looking at me now, but I might as well be a brick wall for how equipped I am to answer that question. It feels almost rhetorical in nature, something with so many reasons that you could apply, that it becomes simply too much to try to put into words. I sheepishly hold up an arm. Would it be too patronizing, too much of a stereotypical guy thing to reach out to her now? It's a moment of vulnerability from someone who's cultivated a life's worth of being invulnerable. I suppose we've all got heavy shit under the surface, Jenna probably most of all. And while some of us sort of downplay its jokes, self-deprecation or lashing out at others, Jenna's always kept it under said surface. Seeing this all brought up to light feels like something raw, uncomfortable, something understood to be immovable, being moved. I look past Jenna to the wash. Like the desert flooding. I exhale, looking back down at her. I can feel my mind going blank, like it did earlier. Her expression's indiscernible, but she's still looking at me. I was really fortunate growing up. I had a boyfriend I loved, a group of friends who supported me, and a family who gave shit. And I'm not like the world's most mentally healthy person, you know? I see a completely different alternative timeline where I'm just like the rest of the guys in Tetanus Alley, or worse. I rubbed the back of my neck sheepishly. I'm not good at making these reassuring speeches, but this is all stuff that I admittedly thought about before. That rat guy was right. Having someone around who gives a damn means the world. And isolating yourself from said world isn't how you're gonna make yourself better. It's the opposite. And for keeping me sane, I do think I kind of have you to thank for that, in some part. My voice cracks and I try to cover it with a cough. Smooth. Thank you, Chase. Jenna smiles lightly. That's actually rather beautiful. Has this been on your mind for a while? I shrug. Lately, at least. Well, I'd like to think that this and your sentiments are true. If we have time, I might stop by to see Jeremy. When I talked to him, he sounded like he wouldn't mind seeing you again. Jenna chuckles briefly. It's strange, isn't it? The notion of you talking to him now, as adults. As kids, we were all sort of at odds over truly stupid things. I suppose I'm curious whether he's grown up as well. I guess we'll see. Jenna raises a brow. Maybe, I mean. All this being said, I'm truly not excited to go back and talk to him or his friends. For Jenna's sake, I can grin and bear it though. I guess I'll have to ask, what made you think of this? I mean, the story about your grandmother. Was it just talking about tech stuff and the reservation? Jenna ponders this question for a moment, looking a bit more like her usual self. However, there's still a slight unnerved tinge to her, like her tail has an extra bit of bristle to it. I suppose that's what got me talking about her. Though, I started thinking about this all earlier. Oh? Up ahead, the screen door on the side of Duke's house flings open. A familiar ash-colored figure peers out, attention focused on us. What are you two doing? He calls out to us, having to shout since we're nearly 3 properties down. At Pueblo, I'd cringe at the idea of someone shouting out this late in the neighborhood. However, most of these houses are long since abandoned. Jenna and I exchange a look before making our way closer to respond. The lanky weasel is certainly looking rougher around the edges than I remember, the old man taking slow steps into his overgrown front yard. Of course, he's got his gun on him, his paw gingerly clutching it while the other brandishes a cigarette. Or at least, I think it's a cigarette. Real late for a stroll, he mumbles. Duke, hi, good morning, it's Jenna. Is that Chase with you? I hold up my paws and wave. Hi? It is. Duke takes a drag from the fat cigarette and I can see some embers fling about as he taps the end. In my mind, I imagine one of those little specks of fire catching on the untrimmed grass beneath, setting everything ablaze. I knew it. What Leo's been saying is true. He was seeing shit as well. Confronted him about it, and he got a wild look in his eyes, pushed me to the dirt. But here you are, in the flesh and talking this time. I give him a befuddled look. What's he talking about? Well, Leo's going through a bit of a rough time, and that's certainly no excuse for the violence he imposed against you. However, we did see you at Carl's house, and you might have heard that he's gone missing. What good timing for your arrival then, Jasmine. It's Jenna now, but that's besides the point. His bloodshot eyes shift from me to her, and that makes me even more uneasy. Have you seen Carl since last night? Duke clicks his tongue, shaking his head more times than he really needs to. I don't think you're investigating the right mystery here. Jenna raises an eyebrow. He points a swollen pink finger in my direction, still looking at Jenna. The real question is, why has your friend here been snooping around our houses here for the past month? What? Jenna furrows her brow, a light sigh escaping from between her lips. I don't know what. I feel her hand discreetly reach over and squeeze my side. Hold on, Chase, she mutters, refocusing her attention back on the weasel. Duke, please focus on me for a moment. Listen to the words that I'm saying. Rather patronizingly. Have you seen Carl since last night? Duke hangs his maw open, rolling his jaw around from side to side until there's an audible click as it locks into place. I don't think you're hearing me. I heard you, Duke. Please, a yes or no answer, and then we can discuss what you saw with Chase here. Duke's bloodshot gaze flicks back to me, and there's something expectant about the look in his eyes. Like he's waiting for me to say something revelatory. I have no clue what he's talking about, though, and Jenna doesn't seem to want to give him an inch of leeway to change the topic of conversation. I see his teeth grit past his thin lips. Despite his intensity he's pulling off, he looks kind of distracted, like we're only getting about 3/4 of his attention. Maybe it wasn't you, though, was it? His voice is strained and quiet. The weasel scratches his inner thigh. I didn't see the Ramboy or his little rich parents. Okay, thank you. Chase? Oh, I only got here on Saturday. I wasn't here before then. There's only really one other otter in town, as far as I know, and he probably weighs 150 pounds more than me. So I don't really know who else it could be. Duke just glares in response to that, and I can't help but drift my gaze to the gun he's holding so idly in his grasp. I think he notices as I see his fingers clench around the base a little tighter. Okay, thank you, Duke. It's really good to see you again. If you have the time, keep an eye out for him, okay? We can't seem to track him down. He's right there. He points to me. No, I'm referring to Carl. Carl's not here. Right. We're going to go look around some more and knock on a few doors once the sun's up. You take care, all right? Before I can so much as raise my paw in farewell, Jenna's already turned about and making her way down the street. Again, I have to hustle to catch up. After about another half hour or so of searching, we end up heading back to Carl's place. After the whole interview with Duke, she starts ranting a little about meth use and the psychological effects. Admittedly, I was only picking up on bits and pieces of what she was saying. Apparently, the drug stimulates the parts of the brain that create urges for tinkering, which is why yards of meth houses look like scrap yards after extended use. Poor Duke. Though the guy always kind of skeeved me out, even back when we were kids. I think he used to have a wife at some point who I remember being really nice. She used to ride her bike around town all the time, and one day she stopped by to help me set up a root beer float stand. Then one day, she just kinda disappeared. Hell, I think I was playing at Leo's house when the cops came to the door and asked if Leo's parents had seen her. Jenna uses her newly acquired spare house key and lets us in. I spent so much time in Carl's house growing up that stepping inside always kind of felt like coming home. Carl's parents were never as friendly as Leo's or TJ's, but they were often just straight up absent, which means that we got the run of the place. I glance off to the side and notice a divot in the wood paneling next to the door. Carl slammed his head there once when we were rough, housing 6 or 7 years ago. It's a wonder we didn't do more damage. Jenna nudges me with her shoulder and I shift my attention back to her. Hey, I'm gonna go put something on in the living room. I've been mainly camped up here on the couch with my laptop while you guys were out earlier, trying to get some studying done. Despite the quiet, it's a little difficult to focus with all this going on. So you want to watch some TV? Well, sure, I've got something in mind. She smiles at me, turning tail to head down the hall. I follow suit, briefly considering raiding the cupboards for snacks, but that kind of feels out of line considering the circumstances. Flynn had turned the air conditioning off last night, so we've got the ceiling fan going overhead. It's doing a pretty good job of keeping me cool, the blades spinning so fast that they almost look still. When I was a kid, I was always afraid of having my fan on high settings. The thing would start to wobble and click, and I thought that at any moment it would spin off its socket to come careening right towards me. This one Carl has looks extremely sturdy though. It kinda looks like it's made out of some sort of brushed copper with turquoise painted metal base. It's at this point that I realize that I'm not doing a good job of focusing on the anime Jenna put on. I glance over to her to see if she's noticed my wandering gaze, but I see that her eyes are closed. At first, I think she's asleep, though they begin to flutter open after some time. She rolls her head some in my direction, catching me gawking. Hmm? She smiles lightly, stretching her arms out over her head and letting out a long yawn. What? I put my best innocent face. Just checking to see that you were as riveted by the ongoing developments of Mr. Wong's fledgling dim sum business. An amused noise escapes her between her lips, her left ear twitching some as she stares at the screen with the half-lidded eyes. Have the magical demon girls showed up yet? The magical demon what? I thought this was a nice little, what do they call it, a slice of life thing? Well, I suppose that's how they get you. She hums her words, her tone sleepy and warm. They lull you into something calm, low pressure, giving you a chance to really live the setting before they pull the rug out from beneath you. Jenna's tone is infectious, and even I start to speak with a sort of rumbling, half-serious whine. Ugh, do they all have to be like that? I mean, what if I just wanted a quiet, slow burn kind of show? It seems like all of them these days just have fantastical bullshit that comes out of nowhere. On screen, the character of Mr. Wong, a rotund red panda, is cooking a batch of fried rice in a large wok. It's also lovingly animated for something so mundane. You can practically see each individual piece of egg, pepper, and seasoning he sprinkles on top. Chase, there are plenty of slow burn shows out there. And how would you even know? You told me you don't keep up with this stuff anymore. I mean, I occasionally will put some anime on while I'm bored back at Pueblo. Oh yeah? Eh, well, I guess hanging out with you has made me kind of interested again. Jenna smiles again. I can see the little tips of her tiny fangs. She shifts in her seat, leaning her head back against the sofa to stare at the spinning fan above. I have a question for you, Chase. Oh? This doesn't have anything to do with our previous conversation, but... When you came out of the closet to me, Leo snatched you up within, what, a couple of hours? You had a boyfriend right from the get-go, something not many rural gay boys can say the same to. If it wasn't Leo, and you had a chance, presuming that they were all consenting... My eyes start to widen some as I begin to realize what she's asking. If you could have been with anyone else in this group, as it not Leo, who would you have chosen? I'm reminded of Flynn's words at the river about viewing the reunion as a chance to pick and choose whom I always wanted to sleep with. The question is so out of left field that it must have been something that had been on Jenna's mind for a while. But why? Give me a second with that one, alright? I promptly push myself to my feet and immediately feel my ass tingle. I guess I've been sitting on my tail again without even noticing. I'm gonna go make some coffee. Do you want any? Decaf, please. I'd like to actually get some sleep soon. That's probably a good idea. The idea of searching all day on only a few hours of rest is sounding less and less appealing to me the more I think about it. I make my way into the kitchen and begin changing out the filter, Leo having left most of the stuff still running from earlier. So, what's your answer? I look to the living room, seeing Jenna with her arms crossed over the back of the sofa, peeping at me with her chin on her wrist. We're focusing on the coffee. It appears that only the decaf flavor that they have is birthday cake. I examine the little container, spinning it around in my fingers. It's got a picture of a bright blue cake on it with sprinkles and everything. Jenna, I'm not sure you're gonna want the flavor they've got. Show me. I hold up a mini container, about to walk back to the living room when she speaks. Birthday cake? It's an interesting ice cream flavor, but a coffee? You could see that from all the way back there? In the dark? Jenna rolls her eyes. I'm a fox, Chase. You could probably see that neon blue cake picture from back here, too. So, are we nixing the coffee idea? Your stalling tactic? I shrug, nonchalantly trying to rub the circulation back into my tail. I'll try it. Could be good. Really? Hey, I like sweet things sometimes. But, as you were saying, I sigh, setting up the coffee maker with a special, delectable infusion blend. Carl. Actually, let's do all three of them for now's sake. Jenna lets out a humored noise. Carl? Truly? Yeah, what's so wrong with that? Jenna quickly shakes her head. Not wrong, of course. It's just surprising. You seem to be getting annoyed with him quite a bit in the old days, back when he was a little more excitable. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean I didn't like him. Coffee begins to slowly drip into the coffee maker. He's mellowed out a lot since then, plus he's been working out. Oh, and here I was talking about past tense. She smiles wryly, turning her head some to peer out the window. It's still dark out from this view, the window facing east and not getting any sunlight. I sigh, shaking my head some as I feel a familiar burning sensation in my cheeks. He's always been a really chill guy to hang around with, and we almost always manage to have a lot of fun together. I know he's gone through some stuff, obviously, because he's literally missing, but he's still cool. Jenna looks back, lifting her head enough to give me a respectful nod. That's very sweet of you, Chase. And you have a blatant fetish for hooves. What? I gawp at her, waiting for her, just kidding. I see you staring at them when we're all hanging out, all the time. It's fine, Chase. It's a perfectly natural thing to be attracted to. The strange and different can be titillating. I don't believe this. Does she actually think I'm some kind of hoof fetishist? That is absolutely not true. I mean, if anything, I'd go for the horns, right? Hell, Carl's were so naturally big, he had to have surgery for them. There's a big taboo about touching a ram's horns, so it was always made them kind of forbidden in a salacious way. Whatever you say, Chase. I make a show of disgruntled grumbling, loud enough that she can hear me from across the room. In earnest, that's really cute that you like Carl. You can tell from what we saw on his desktop that he's pretty fond of you and the time you spent with him. And I promise I won't tell him about what you've told me when he does turn up. I assume that last bit was a given. The who fetishes thing, though, that's fair game. Of course. Jenna. She holds up her flat of her paws, looking at me with a sleepy, innocent expression. Though I could be persuaded to keep such information in confidence. Do you still have some of that oatmeal with the little sugary dinosaur eggs in it at the motel? Fuck you. Yeah. Jenna just smiles lightly at me, her timid, impish expression cute if it weren't for the fact that it's all at my expense. You can have some, I guess. I mean, if we find Carl. Otherwise, it's just a moot point. Great, and don't worry, we'll find your future boyfriend. Future boyfriend? For some reason, the thought of that sends a weird tingling sensation down my spine. It's not really something I want to put too much extended thought to with him missing and me leaving at the end of the week, though. You know, I really like mixing an applesauce when I make it. What? The oatmeal. Huh. I just put in a bit of milk in it. If I don't have that, I just use more water. Okay, we're gonna go back and do Flynn. Flynn, I mean, he's the only actual gay guy here, right? Jenna lets out a long sigh. She opens her mouth to say something, stops, then begins to speak again. You're referring to teenage Flynn, not right now Flynn, correct? I shrug. In general, I guess. Even after what he said at the river, he's not only called you a slut, but a boring one at that. And we both know at least one of those things isn't true. Coffee begins to slowly drip from the coffee maker. Thank you, Jenna, for the continued words of confidence. I'll be sure to hire you for my continued therapy sessions down the line. She smiles briefly, turning her head some to peer out the window. It's still dark out from the view, the window facing east and not getting any sunlight. I sigh, shaking my head some as I feel a familiar burning sensation in my cheeks. But seriously, why though? It's a simple enough question, but for some reason I'm having trouble forming the words to answer. It is that no-nonsense attitude, the fierce pragmatism, the dark sense of humor? Or is it the fact that he's a 6-foot-tall predator with a venomous bite and a lurid stare? All I managed to say is, he's gay? Really? That's it? I shrug my shoulders. Jenna looks back at me, waving her hand dismissively. Okay. Let's do TJ now. I guess I always had a bit of a crush. Ah, Jenna lets out a humored noise. Really now? That's interesting, Chase. I didn't think you had it in you. What's that supposed to mean? Well, he's much smaller than you are, and I always figured, with how you and Leo acted, you appreciated someone larger than you. I feel my cheeks begin to burn at the implication laid in the last few words. Coffee begins to slowly drip from the coffee maker. Also, as I recall, his faith often made you uncomfortable. If you were dating him, I'd imagine that might be quite the hurdle for you to overcome. You could barely stand carpooling with him and his family, if I recall. That was when I was really young, and that anti-religious thing I was kind of putting on for Leo. I remember that phase. One day Leo shows up on the bus with a handful of internet printouts for Catholic church scandals. She waves her paw dismissively, turning her head some to peer out the window. It's still dark out from the view, the window facing east and not getting any sunlight. With regards to what you said before, this may sound cliche, but size doesn't really matter to me. TJ's just really cute. Ugh. Being around him makes me bile. And that sort of energy just could... Ugh. Jenna looks back, lifting her head enough to give me a respectable nod. That's very sweet of you, Chase. TJ messaged me a fair amount last week about being excited to spend time with you again. He really does like you. She pauses. Though, perhaps not in the same respect of what you're wanting. Wanting hypothetically. Of course. And we're gonna go back to Carl, because this choice does change some dialogue. I'm not gonna pick none of you, or not one. I mean, should I? Well, let's try it, I guess. I just can't shake the feeling that I don't really deserve anyone. I feel like I'm just a blank canvas that people can project whatever they want upon, you know? Jenna looks at me from across the living room, and I get the impression that she's pitying me. That's very sad, Chase. Though, I suppose for the sake of levity, I'm going to clarify the parameters of the question. You have to pick someone. I guess I had expected some semblance of sympathy, followed by reassuring but firm words of wisdom. I don't think either of us have the stomach anymore for that sort of heavy discourse this early in the morning. Fine. Blank. I pick Carl, because, I mean, obviously. Carl has the most amount of dialogue, which means that's probably the right choice. Oh, oops. After a couple kinda awkward minutes, the coffee is finally ready. The sun has started to peek through and paint the previously dark violet sky with more orange hues, blue just beyond the horizon. Orange sunrises are kind of rare around here, so there must have been a dust storm or a hard rain somewhere down the eastward. Jenna and I slump back into the nice leather sofas and lower our eyes, sipping at the abrasively sugary coffee. I'm not really too keen on this stuff, but Jenna seems to be warming up to it. She mumbles something about it reminding her of birthday parties at Leo's. I'm only half paying attention, and I lie back and rest my head on one of Carl's silken throw pillows. Everything just kind of fades away. Yo, you guys been having fun? I glance over at Jenna, the fennec curled up into herself on the other side of the couch. She's cradling a throw pillow against her chest. With a small grunt, I manage to move my limbs without too much trouble. No sleep paralysis this time, thankfully. Jenna's eyes flutter open. She blinks at her surroundings, then me, then the sound coming from the entrance hall. She rubs her face, trying to shake off the sleepy fatigue. What did you say? There's some clattering noises coming from the kitchen, like the rustling of plastic bags and the crackling of Tupperware. I asked if you fuckers have been having fun. It's midday. Flynn, you got our text. We were up last night searching for Carl. Yeah, and making yourselves at home here. What you got over there? Hentai? I checked the TV. It's frozen on a guide menu screen grab of a frantic anime girl holding way more bowls of soup than is ordinarily considered reasonable. I grab the remote and turn it off. Jenna yawns into her paw, setting the pillow down beside her and idly fixing her slightly smushed head fur. Her expression and general demeanor is visibly distracted, but not by Flynn or by me. Though she does manage a quick smile in my direction when she does focus her gaze my way. I return the same smile, albeit lopsidedly, half my face still feeling tingly and asleep. So we're fucking dead certain that Duke doesn't know shit then. God damn it. I hear the footfalls of the heavy Gilla leave the kitchen, making his way around to us. He's holding 4 small plastic containers. He gives 2 to each of us, setting them down on the coffee table. The insides are fogged up from the condensation or steam, so I can't tell exactly what they contain. It looks green, I guess? Flynn sees me gawking and then lets out an exasperated puff of air through his flared nostrils. The top containers got Caesar salad. The bottoms got fresh cooked bluegill. Bluegill? I blink at the steamy container. You catch that yourself? Yeah. He perks a brow ridge. And you cooked it? Just for us? The line of questions seemed to give the Gill a pause, as if he needs to make sure he phrases his next words carefully. Jenna smirks in my direction before blowing her nose into a tissue. Usually I just drop off some stuff for Carl. He folds his arms over his chest. You know, to make sure he doesn't go into full-on diabetic coma, his arteries packed full with pizza and energy drinks. That's very thoughtful of you, Flynn. Yeah, thanks, man. I give him a thumbs up, which he just shakes his head at. Whatever, any words from the sheriff's office? Jenna reaches into her shorts and grabs her phone. She taps on it for a few moments before shaking her head. Nothing since yesterday. The person I spoke with at the office said that they would reach out to me with any questions or updates they had. God fucking useless. They're so goddamn overstaffed over there. How hard can it be to find one fat-ass rich kid in the midst of a vast fucking nowhere? Apparently rather difficult. Just waiting for Carl's parents to post for reward money or some shit. I don't think public entities get to claim those sort of things. Flynn scowls at Jenna for a good 4 seconds before turning away, walking to the grand living room window and peering out into the backyard. Well, yeah, I fucking know that. It's just, it doesn't make a lick of sense. No food, cars, or cell phones missing, nothing valuable stolen, and no break-in indications besides the scruff marks to make on your way in. Flynn, if we had gone through the window, Leo probably would have eventually shoulder-rammed the front door. Flynn folds his hands behind the back of his head, clenching his eyes shut. Yeah. God, what a fucking crazy ass. At least his desperate party attempt helped us figure out what Carl was missing earlier. Jenna pushes herself to her feet, walking over to beside Flynn. She folds her arms over her chest. So, we briefly skimmed over this yesterday, but with regards to Carl's mental state leading up to all this, Flynn's ever so slightly shifts his head to the Fennec's direction, her size difference stark as they stand silhouetted in front of the window. Is there anything you can think of that would help us out here? Anything to cause Carl to say fuck it and run out into the desert without any belongings, you mean? Yes, Jenna answers flatly. He's been depressed as hell, but that's how he's been since he dropped out of college. All that digital art shit that he used to do, he hasn't done much of it either, lately. Whenever I check my phone or computer, he's still always online, just sending me memes and shit all day. Despite my efforts, there haven't been much in the line of indication that he's been planning or changing that routine anytime soon. I'm sorry to hear that. She sounds genuine to that regard, letting out a quiet sigh. Ain't nothing you can do about it from fancy college land. I finally get my ass off the couch, silently hoping that I hadn't left the surface all oily. I think he's been getting high more though. Says it chills him out. Helps with the nightmares and shit. Nightmares? Flynn nods. Yeah, he's been going off about how his house is haunted. Says things get weird whenever he goes to bed. Weird how? Flynn is starting to look increasingly exasperated at my continued prodding. It evident he wants to shift focus back to the search effort. Fuck Chase, I don't know. Bumps in the night, creepy children whispers, distant laughing, that sort of thing. Said he only heard them when he was about to fall asleep or was waking up, so he never investigated. Interesting. Really? You said that getting high was how he coped with his newfound paranoia? I let him sleep over once and my whole room smelled like skunk weed for a fucking week. He slept over because he was afraid to be here, in this house? No, he stayed over because I was plowing his ass. Which is probably true. His tone is laden with sarcasm, and even I find myself snickering a bit at the shock. Jenna doesn't laugh though, meeting Flynn's gaze with an indiscernible expression. The Gilla clears his throat, scratching at his stomach. Yeah, he was afraid to be here. I know enough about Carl's family to know that this house is seriously old. His great-great something or other is the town founder after all. The place has been seriously modernized into a more stucco, adobe style, but there's some definite history beneath all this. Growing up, Carl started thinking that there were ghosts in the house. It freaked him out pretty badly. So much so that his parents basically begged me to sleep over during the weekends, and even some weekdays. Not that I minded, of course. Carl had all the video game consoles that were out, and his parents bought him M-rated games. I got to stay up late with his giant TV blowing up aliens and running over hookers. I remember he started to become less afraid as time went on, and his parents stopped asking me to come over as much. So of course, shitbag younger me told Carl a bunch of stories about a ghost bride whom I said I saw standing outside his house at midnight. And that's how I got to spend my whole 5th grade summer vacation living at Carl's place. The fact that Carl is still freaked out about this sort of thing is pretty concerning. Well, to be quite fair, if I had the mindset that my house was haunted and saw whatever that was on the phone out my window... She pauses, shaking her head. I'd probably be pretty freaked out as well. Yeah, but would you run outside? That doesn't make any sense. You'd think that this place would be more ransacked if this was a fucking kidnapping or something. I don't try and kidnap a fucking ram without getting some serious dents and scratches into the drywall. The idea of Carl being assaulted like this is starting to give me a serious pit in the bottom of my stomach. Well, you did find some scattered plaster dust and marks on the walls near the basement crawl space. Yeah, maybe there could have been like an initial scuffle down there, and then he was like held at gunpoint or something? There's a look of sudden shock at the direness of my words that flashes across Flynn's face. Anxiety, fear, concern, all the expressions seldom seem on the lizard. He quickly stifles them, adopting his usual disgruntled demeanor, emitting forth a familiar grunt in response. Guys, I think we're escalating here. No offense to you, Chase, but I think I might want to have a chat with Jeremy myself. You can come along, of course. Same to you, Flynn. Despite Jenna's assurances to non-offense, I can't help but feel a little shitty about not pressing harder for the information while I was there. I mean, fuck, I want to be a journalist, right? I can't be getting intimidated by my childhood bullies. Flynn nods, but only slightly. Yeah, but Chase said that he told him the drugs he sold weren't laced. Laced drugs wouldn't result in that image on the phone. Shit, I haven't talked to that flunk ass in so fucking long. You were always a bit too old to get the brunt of his sadistic side when we were growing up. Thought that it was mainly Clint. They all robbed off on each other easily enough. Flynn pulls out his phone, a rather dated first-gen looking thing from the late 2000s. He pecked at it with his large fingers, wadding off towards the foyer. Gonna text TJ and Pinball Smasher that we're together and asking around. No need to be more specific than that. Trust me, I wasn't about to tell him where we were heading till we were done. Poor TJ, I'll make sure to text him to make sure he's alright. We start to head out as well when he suddenly calls us back out. Oh, and bring your goddamn lunch. It took me for fucking ever to put that together. And that's where I'm gonna leave it for today. Mainly because my dog is doing the coughing hacking sounds and I need to give him his medicine. Anyways, so Carl again is still missing. That seems to be the running gag in Jenna's route, I guess. But we got to see Jenna being a bit more curious about Chase's, I guess, potential choices for a paramour had Leo not snatched Chase up like within 5 minutes of him, revealing he was gay. And I guess the more favorable option would be Carl because, they were friends and they grew up together and he's a more laid-back, chill one as opposed to Flynn, who Jenna has a really bad image of, I guess. Or TJ, who probably wouldn't work out. I mean, because we've seen from TJ's route that he probably wouldn't respond, all that well to being hit on by Chase. I mean, obviously, he's straight. Anyways, thank you for watching slash listening. And if you would like to play any of the Echo Project games, there will be links in the descriptions. If you would like to support the Echo Project and eventually be able to play Arches yourself and read the short stories for Echo and eventually play this one other story, I forgot what it's called. I think it's called Glory Hounds. That will eventually be out this year. Then, subscribe and you'll have access to that. But yeah, I guess I will be seeing you guys Wednesday, hopefully, and then maybe Friday, depending on how well the dog is doing and how tired I am from not being able to sleep. But yeah, bye-bye.